Hi everybody, my name is Dennis and welcome back to another album review. Today we're reviewing the third album from the late XXXTentacion, entitled Skins. Now I want to clarify before I say any critiques that his death was extremely unfortunate and no one deserves to die that young, no one deserves to die in that way. I mean, my heart goes out to the family, all of those who cared about him. It's a very tragic thing. So I don't feel happy that he died. I don't support it, but it's something that we all just need to accept at this point. So with that out of the way, this album was not good. And unfortunately, a lot of that wasn't even at the fault of XXXTentacion. Although I don't think the musical aspects of this album were good, I think the contextual aspects were even worse. A lot of the music is unfinished, as one would expect because of his passing. But what I find so unfortunate is the way it almost seems like the people who are in charge of this leftover music are releasing it almost as if it's supposed to be a complete album. And this is so far from a complete album by any means. Only one of the songs even breaches 3 minutes. The majority of the songs don't even make 2 minutes. And that's okay when you're just throwing out ideas into a microphone when you're first developing something. There's nothing wrong with that. But releasing it in this state, it's like giving birth to a fetus, where, I mean, it's still technically an album, or a fetus is still technically a human, but there's no way that it can survive in that state. There's no way that it can be expected to function properly. And unfortunately, this album does quite the opposite of functioning properly. There are, other than probably Train Food, every single song on here feels so abhorrently unfinished. Where you have something like What Are You So Afraid Of, which just basically loops the same line over and over again. Or you have something like Whoa, Mind and All, which has half of a verse, if you can even call it that, with some whoa, whoa, whoas. It's not a song. Even though, like, sure, there's music to it, sure, there's singing to it, there's so little content in everything. It's a skeleton. It's a skeleton of an album. And there was so little effort put into sprucing it up to make it even sound half listenable. I mean, granted, Little Peep's latest album, at least that sounded somewhat finished. It sounded like it was almost ready to be released. This doesn't. This feels like the people in charge are just milking his death for profit. And that is disgusting. Where you are using the death of another human being to boost your own profits. And I know that this is not the only case of something like this happening. It will not be the last case of it happening. But that doesn't make it right. That doesn't make it right. And the way they're marketing this, like I said, it's as if they're selling it as a full, complete project. If they had simply labeled it as like the unfinished project of XXXTentacion, or put it up for free download, I think that would have made the situation so much better. But unfortunately, they're looking to get every penny out of the desperate fans who want more music from XXXTentacion. It's really unfortunate. I think the people who were in charge of this are despicable. I find their actions to be sickening, and I can't listen to any parts of this album without thinking of how disgusting it makes me feel knowing that I'm supporting it to an extent. I listened to this way too many times than it deserved. I'm just putting more money in the pockets of people who are trying to do these kinds of things. I debated, honestly, not even listening to the album, going through those thoughts. There's just there's just not an. This isn't an album. Plain and simple, this is not an album. I mean, granted, that doesn't mean every track is horrible. I mean, Guardian Angel, he has some decent flows, but even then, it's minimal. There's minimal content. The beat is just a reversed Jocelyn Flores, and it doesn't sound good. Train Food, even though I don't think the pianos are that horrible, I find his vocals on this very grating. And the abrupt ending where he sounds almost like an awkward prepubescent Eminem with his vocals, I don't enjoy that whatsoever. We have some really awkward tracks that are trying to be metal. We have Staring at the Sky, the latter half of that, and 1 Minute, which features Kanye West, which is a very, very poor feature on this album. In fact, it's the only feature, but it's horrendous. Where Kanye sounds like he is a mix of what My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy would sound like if it was horrible, and if Yeezus was even worse. And just put those together, and you have this ugly love child that's called 1 Minute, where it's the only song that reaches 3 minutes on the album, where Kanye is basically on it exclusively for the first 2. And we have some really poorly looped, really poorly echoed screams from XXXTentacion. They're not pleasant on the ears. They're really they're really in your face about how little time they put into making this sound half decent. Like I said, they wanted to push it out as quickly as possible so they wouldn't lose the attention behind X's unfortunate passing. So with all that being said, this is a disappointment of an album, even from someone like myself who isn't a huge X fan. I find everyone who is involved in this should be ashamed. They really should. No one deserves to have this as their legacy. No one deserves to be a cash cow from the grave. So, I'm feeling a strong 1. If you listen to this album, tell me what you thought of it. Tell me how wrong my opinion is in the comments. And I'll see you in the next review.